So let's get back to the issue of fiscal space. Remember, we said we need to enhance fiscal space in order to sustainably finance public health insurance. And one of the ways we said we do so would be to identify who actually needs subsidies, because we should not and cannot subsidize everybody as a country. So, what are we going to do? We say that to enhance fiscal space, the budgetary rule, the budget that the government has to finance some of these health programs, we said we might need to tap onto private sector funding. And this applies a lot to the middle income, uh, lower middle income, upper middle income, and some of the lower income countries that are growing very fast. They can actually tap into private sector financing in terms of environmental impact assessments for capital projects. Remember, we say that capital projects are those projects such as land, infrastructure, and others that have an extremely high capital base. They use a lot of money, $3 billion, $5 billion, $20 billion per year invested into these projects. And so a small percentage of it needs to be channeled through the national financing systems like Treasury or the central bank, the system that collects revenue and actually transfers it for use in public projects. That same system should be utilized to channel this money and finance health, amongst other social development agenda. That is one way of doing it. The second way of expanding fiscal space is developing social protection systems. Once you have some of this money, then you develop social protection systems. How do you do that? Number one, first of all, you seek the policy, regulatory, and legal support that you require from your parliament and others. Shift your Ministry of Social Protection or whoever is in charge of that. A lot of the times it's social welfare, child welfare, and others. Shift it into or develop it into a social development ministry, which looks at the individual at all stages of the life cycle. So, who needs help? Neonates, very little children, pregnant women, expectant mothers, the elderly. So you have this system, the orphans, they need this kind of support. But when you're talking about social protection, you'll realize that you'll give them two or three services, piecemeal services, and call it a day. But what they need is a social development service that looks at them up to the point where they have human capital, where they can contribute productively to the society. And in the case of older people, where they do not fall down past the poverty line and where they still keep enjoying a life full of dignity. So do not just focus on piecemeal services. Don't just give an orphan food rations. Give them some vocational training through the Ministry of Planning or others. Do give the orphan food subsidies through the Ministry of Health or the Nutrition Ministry, whichever that is in your country, and ensure that this 24-year-old orphan is also. We are, I'm saying yes, 24-year-old orphan because some people stop calling them orphans when they are 14. That does not mean that they have not lost both parents still. They've still lost parents, whether they're 14 or 24. And you know that in any job market, a lot of it depends on who you know. So if you are an orphan, you're 24, you have good vocational training, and you're competing against the daughter of a minister for a job, you can guess who will get the job first. First of all, it would probably be the daughter of that highly placed individual. Secondly, somebody who has more connections than the orphan. Remember, the orphan does not have parents, and a lot of them, total orphans, have been cut out of protection, this kind of adult protection for a long time. So it depends on you, the Ministry of Health, the ministry in charge of this, the vocational training, to ensure that they land a job spot. And then once they have that job, they've maintained it for at least 6 months to a year. Then you can easily say, now we are moving on. This one has been developed socially. Otherwise, leaving somebody with meals between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. does nothing to protect them from social ills. It does very little because after 6 p.m. is when most people fall sick. After 6 p.m. is when most people fall into deviant behavior. After 6 p.m. is when they need your protection. And so, shift from social protection to social development systems. One country that has done this extremely well is the Kingdom of Lesotho, which has very um, wisely developed an information system, collected data on individuals, and then followed them through the life stages. They have a national policy, a social development policy that follows people through the life stages. That is the Kingdom of Lesotho. Another thing you need to do is to provide some capital for social protection funds, either within or outside the National Health Insurance Scheme, and then strengthen civil society engagement in social protection in terms of identification of those in need, advocacy, communication, and social mobilization. And then revitalize this multi-sectoral collaboration in provision of health sensitive protection, including promotion of nutrition, vocational training, other form of justice support, and others. And then engage the education sector to increase enrollment and retention in school. A lot of problems in this world can be solved just by keeping, especially girls, in school. So the education sector, the justice, GJ laws, justice governance, law and order sector, the Ministry of Planning, the treasuries, all these need to come together and offer some social development support to those in need. And then engage other sectors such as the vocational services for the older orphans and the vulnerable children. That is how you provide social protection. Now, let's get out of these social issues and talk about what probably brought you here, which is how to raise money. Let's move next to how to raise money. We've begun talking about it briefly. We've spoken about environmental impact assessments, private sector capital contributions. How else do we raise funds for the health sector and a government generally? Here is where it gets interesting. So join us in the next episode to talk about other strategies for enhancing fiscal space. Thank you.